Year one of Phil Longo's offense didn't quite have the results Badger fans were hoping for. What can we expect in year two of the air raid system? The 2024 preseason preview rolls on. I'm Rajiv. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, as we continue looking ahead to the 2024 season, we talk about the Phil Longo offense, what went wrong and right last year, and what can we expect this year to look like. We talk through some offensive predictions and expectations. The Know Your Foe series moves into week 3 when one of the most storied opponents in football, the Alabama Crimson Tide, will make their appearance at Camp Randall Stadium. We touch quickly on Big Ten Media Days that are coming up this week, and of course, listener questions. Get them in the chat. If you're listening live, we want to talk about what you want to talk about. We had hoped to have our good friend Ryan Herrings on the show tonight. If you don't know, Ryan moved like halfway across the country, so he's been a bit busy. He texted Justin and I today and said he can't make the show tonight, but he's going to be on next week. Next week, I'm going to tell you this right now. We got a good show next week already planned. Nick Osen's going to be back, and Ryan Herrings will be back. Big Ten Media Days are coming up, so Nick's going to kind of fill us in on things that he learned from Big Ten Media Days. We're going to probably break down the defense, so it's going to be a 4-person pod next week. We are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you can find your podcasts. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button so you know when we make new, fresh content. Justin, how are you? How was your week, man?
It's been pretty good. Honestly, we're getting a week closer to the season. I'm just ready to be there at this point. I want fall camp to start. I want to start hearing about players doing things again, guys hitting guys, finding out that, what's going on with our team and what we can expect. Heck
yeah, man. Some people already in the chat. Dark Ray, what up? Good to see you, Dark Ray. Tyler Strieber, Will Hanna, warm cheese curds, crackers, and smoked salmon during the show. That sounds pretty good, Will. I like it. Murph hasn't been here in a while. Haven't been on here since the Stone Age. What up? Good to see you, Murph. Yeah. So listen, the season preview's rolling on. How many days are we away? 40? Are we less than 40?
40, I believe. Yeah.
40, I believe. All right. So that's good. We're getting close. We're going to have season preview content literally coming out every single week now. We're continuing the Know Your Foe series. Today, we're going to talk about offense. Next, we'll probably talk about defense. We're going to talk about Big Ten Media Days. We're going to have to start doing some midweek stuff to go through our Know Your Foe series. So this is the fun part. This is the fun part of the season that makes up a lot of it's exciting. It's exciting to talk about real football. So let's talk about offense. Last year, Phil Longo's first year in the system wasn't exactly what everyone hoped for. It was different. It was new. We didn't have that. We thought it was going to be crazy numbers. Could have been crazy numbers, but it really wasn't. So we're going to get into that a little bit today. I'm going to pull up, Justin, the stats, and I got to guide my right screen here.
See,
stats from last year.
One of the interesting things about this, by the way, that I want to throw out there is that we did say leading into last season there was a chance that there was going to be growing pains with this offense.
Sure, yeah.
Now, we were definitely bullish on it, hoping that things would come together. But it's not a shock that they struggled last year. Like, given the level of change that was happening, that they really struggle with getting everything kind of go in place, especially with the offensive line. Like, let's be honest with that. That was a significant change in style of play for them.
Do you think, though? I mean, yes, that's a fair point, but you wouldn't have expected 23 points a game, though.
No, I would have expected closer to what they had been doing,
right?
Which is simply 27-28.
So if you're watching on YouTube, we put up some offensive stats last year. We'll talk through a couple of them here for those listening to the podcast. 23.5 points per game, 381 yards per game, 6.1 passing yards per attempt, and 4.6 rushing yards per attempt. Those are numbers that kind of stick out to me. As far as overall rushing attempts and passing attempts, pretty equal, right? Overall, 454 for rushing, 469 for passing. We kind of had talked about a 50-50 split most likely in passing and rushing, and that's exactly what we got. And our time of possession was just under half of the game. What sticks out to you here, Justin, as the stat that you kind of look at and think, this is what concerned me the most about last year's offense, and that you think needs the biggest improvement this year?
Honestly, I think it's probably yards per attempt. I think that's way too low to me.
Yeah.
It's got to be up around 7. And an offense like this, it should be honestly closer to 8 with the type of offense we're running. Like, this is an offense predicated on explosive plays. So if it's going well and the offense is working, we should be over 8. And we've seen that with Tyler Van Dyke. Look at what he had for his career numbers. Like, his lowest one was like
7.3
or 7.3.
Yep.
And I think the other two were both over 8. So
yeah, he had 8.1 and 9.0 were his freshman. The big freshman season was 9. Yeah, I mean, totally. I agree with you. I mean, I think that yards per attempt is glaring on this. And I think the other thing that glares on this to me, I mean, obviously points per game. We already talked about that. That's just ridiculous. But passing touchdowns was really surprising to me. 14 passing touchdowns last year, 22 rushing touchdowns. We didn't score enough, but 14 passing touchdowns.
It was bad. In an offense like this, that should never happen.
There's no chance that we would have. I mean, if you would have said the over and under last year was 13, we would have laughed at everyone. We would have been like, that's, or 15. We would have been like, take it over and bet your house on it.
I think we said the floor was around 20 is what we were assuming.
100%. I mean, it's so strange.
Yeah.
Dark Ray says that was worse than offenses we had under Chris. Well, I mean, sometimes, yeah, sometimes no.
Yeah, I mean, the other part, but one of the factors you have to look at with regards to the Chris offense, they're running the same system for 7 years.
Yeah.
So everyone was cohesive and knew what they were doing. It just wasn't good. So this is like, you're blowing it up. You have a bunch of people doing new jobs that don't know what they're doing. Efficiency is going to be a problem.
Right.
Now you have guys that have been doing it for a year. You should expect honestly, after the first year, a massive jump in efficiency. And now after next year, it should be kind of fine tuning.
Hopefully.
I would expect a big jump this year in terms of the offensive line, especially. And that is, quite frankly, the area that I think is going to be the reason why they're going to be so much more improved this year. I just believe in Blazik. Like, there's nothing particularly that I can go into from a coaching standpoint with him that I know it's going to work out. I just think that there's somebody that has absolutely hit the ground and crushed everything he's touched so far. It's been him.
On the recruiting trail, yes, but it's still got to happen on the field.
It does. And I think that he's legit. I think he's a dude that actually can, like, he got here because of his coaching acumen. I think that is part of the issue is when you hear how he is as a coach and how detailed he is and how his vision with things leads me to believe that he's going to be significantly better at getting the most out of these guys. He's going to be very good at kind of getting them to understand what exactly the expectations are of them in order for them to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Justin. What did you actually like most about what you saw last year on this offense?
I legitimately think that the timing was broken just because of a myriad of different things. But I think we, for the first time in a long time in a Wisconsin offense, we saw guys running free at times. And that is something that has not happened enough. I think people really wanted to bag on the talent level of the wide receivers, which I honestly think our talent level is being undersold. I think that there is talent in that receiving room for them to be, let's put it this way. I don't think we're looking at a plus elite wide receiver room, but I think it's a good room. I think there is talent there that if timing is working and everything like that, there are guys capable of getting open against pretty much anybody. Now, do I think there's guys in there that can be freak show, win when they have to against a team like Alabama or Oregon or whoever? I don't necessarily think that, but I think they're guys that are going to break open on plays in those games. And I think that's what right now, that's what you're looking for is an improvement in that area.
The room is good. The room is really good. And it was underperformed last year, most certainly. Obviously, you're right. New system, new quarterback, Tanner Mordecai. We didn't quite, it never really gelled completely. When you have 14 passing touchdowns and 6.1 yards per attempt, nothing gelled, like offensively. But I have a lot of confidence that's going to change this year. What I like most about it is seeing Wisconsin actually run a shotgun offense, which was kind of nice to see. I mean, that was like the fact that we actually had, not even unpredictable play calling is one thing that how many times did we say that when in Paul Chris last year, we harped on it over and over and over again. It was so predictable.
Run, pass.
And we weren't predictable last year. Now we were predictable at times, but I'm excited about the fact that everything's changed up now. And I do believe that Longo's got what it takes to take that next step. And I think it's super important. And so there's a lot to like here. that we can look forward to and expect going into next season. So before we do kind of expectations for what we're going to see here, let's kind of just quickly run through the depth chart. Now, the offensive line, quarterback, running backs, that's pretty clear. Like, there's not really much. Yeah, there's not much to really discuss there. Let's quickly go with receivers and just talk about what you officially think is going to be your starting wide receivers.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I think you're going to have, it's obviously going to be Green on the outside. I think you're probably going to have Vinny Anthony on the other and Pauling in the slot. Like, I think that's a lock.
I don't know that Vinny
Anthony might not be.
I think CJ,
Green
CJ
definitely.
Will, yeah. Green and Pauling are locks to me. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. Green came out at the end of last season, so that's there. But CJ Williams, I think, on paper, he's the guy. He has more that skill, but Vinny Anthony has clearly been impressing in spring practice. So
it's going to be whoever takes it by the reins in fall camp, I think, and it just shows out. And that's, I think, right now, if we're looking at it, Anthony is the guy who is kind of in the lead, but I'm not sure how significant that gap is. But until somebody takes it from him, it's his job to lose. And
if it is Anthony, then you got backing those guys up. You got Quincy Burrows. Mm-hmm. You got CJ Williams if he's going to back up. Then you got the guy, Trech Kahuna. I mean, that's pretty good 6 deep that you're thinking you're pretty comfortable about how those guys feel and their ability. And then you still got Terrell Henry, who, by the way, was a transfer in. And we didn't even list him yet. He could easily find himself in the 2 deep. And then, of course,
he's got some work to do because it seems like he's kind of came in and he's down the list a little. And then Griffith, or was it Joseph Griffith? Who's the one from Boston College?
Joseph Griffith.
I'm probably getting his name wrong.
Why is that?
The wide receiver that came in from the transfer portal.
Someone in the
Griffin?
chat will help us out.
I think it's Griffin.
Is it Griffin? Yeah. And then you got KBJ too, and see how he decides to fold in and whether it can happen here. And then tight end. The other one is tight end, of course. Then I think you're looking at Ashcraft, Nowakowski, McGowan. Obviously, I'm just why am I forgetting McGowan? McGowan. You think McGowan is gonna be number 1, or is Ashcraft gonna take that to start?
I think it's going to be a committee. I think there's going to be. I think right now, if we're talking about wide receiver or like a biggest threat as a receiver, I think it's going to be McGowan.
Yeah,
I just think that he's the guy there that provides the most athletically. There's a couple of younger guys who may be able to push if they really come on, but Ashcraft, I think, is probably going to be the guy who's the most well-rounded this season. I'm just not sure he's ready to be a guy that can be relied on enough in the passing game to be a viable big-time threat.
So the next thing I want to ask you is this, and I'll go first on this one. Storyline that you are most looking forward to about this offense. Pop your answers in the queue as well as to kind of what you're thinking about. What storyline are you kind of thinking about? For me, there's 2 things, and they're kind of. I was on a show the other day with Ryan on Locked On, and we were talking about the DBs. And my biggest issue was my storyline was tackling and how much of a struggle that was last year. This year, for these guys, it's drops and penalties. Those are 2 things that I feel like we don't talk about a lot. We're not focused on preseason. We're focused on the talent. We're focused on who we're playing. We're focused on these things. But if you have a lot of penalties and you have a lot of drops and you shoot yourselves in the foot, the way this team shot themselves in the foot last year, that's how that number goes from 29 points a game to 23 points a game. That's how it happens. I mean, we had countless drops last year that were very untimely. Obviously, Skylar Bell was a part of that. They all were really a part of that. Even Pauling has a couple drops. So it's obviously that's something where I'm thinking, okay, this offense has the potential to be really good, but they can't make their own mistakes. They can't get in their own way. Yeah. So that's something that I'm going to be watching very early on. Drops, penalties. We talked a lot about Jack Nelson last year at left tackle. How many holding penalties? I mean, I think you were on reaction shows. Literally, your face was like turning red talking about Jack Nelson because it was a tough time to watch.
It was worse when we were off the show.
I mean, yes, it really was. And that's something that is it's a big storyline for me because it will absolutely take the air out of what we're doing.
They're drive killers. Absolutely drive killers.
Yeah. What's your big storyline?
Yeah, I think for me, it's got to be Tyler Van Dyke, because if he comes in and he regains the form that he showed early on with how promising he's capable of being, he just elevates the entire offense. He is going to make the running game have a far easier time. He's going to hopefully be able to create some throws and plays that we just haven't seen in a Wisconsin offense in a really long time. But there's so many things that you can look at in this offense and say, if this thing adds, like we look at what happened last year, it could simply be the snaps. Like we could say that is a storyline. Like isn't it stupid that could legitimately be one of the things where like, yeah, the snaps are actually on time and the quarterback actually has time to get the ball out like on time with the way the plays are being run. And now receivers are getting the ball in stride with room to run.
Yeah.
And that changes everything. Like it could be that simple. And it's ridiculous to me that it's that simple, but that's legitimately one of the things that could change the season.
You know, in every single reaction show, we talked about that. And for some reason, I feel like we were the only people talking about it. It's not, and our listeners too. Like our listeners, everybody like on, and there were a lot of people that were focused on it, but you watch the broadcast, no one even brought it up many times. Oh, yeah. I'm like, this is a glaring problem. Tanner Mordecai should not have to jump to his right or jump to his left to get a snap. And Bortolini really struggled with that. And it really did throw the timing off. It's an underrated thing.
I think because Bortolini was playing it or like trying his butt off, that they didn't want to kind of crap on him. But let's be honest, he's not a great center. Like from the standpoint of being a snapper, I should say, because as a center from a blocking standpoint, he was very good. But the snaps were a problem, and they absolutely affected the offense. And I don't think that they had anybody better in the wings, or we would have been there. But I think Bortolini would even say, he's like, yeah, I wasn't great from snapping standpoint. It still was a problem. There's a reason why we went into that bowl game and everything looked so much crisper when Renfro was out there.
Cool.
And it just makes such a huge difference for everybody that in this case, I think that the coaching staff didn't want to talk about it. I think when you heard other people talking about it, they acted like it's not a big deal. And I'm like, it's absolutely a big deal. Half a second in a timing-based offense, which are a lot of short passes like that is going to cause issues where guys can recover. Like suddenly that defender is a step more on top of that guy than he would have been when you wanted to actually get the ball out on time.
You're absolutely right. You're talking about seconds, fractions of seconds for defensive linemen to get in the backfield and make disruptive plays. And any timing that's off can absolutely do that. No doubt about it.
If you're a hitter in baseball, if they say you have to start your swing a half second later, you're going to strike out every time.
I mean, every single time. That's like me trying to swing the bat. It's not pretty. All right. So going into 2024, let me ask you this question. What will be the biggest visible change that you think you're going to see in Phil Longo's offense this year? What's the biggest difference you think you're going to see?
Honestly, from an alignment standpoint, I think we're going to see a lot more 4 wide receiver sets. And I think it's going to absolutely be because I think Tretch is going to force himself out there. He is going to be one of the top 3 receivers. Like his numbers are going to be better than Anthony. And that's no shade on Anthony. It's just, I think that he's that capable of being a playmaker in this offense. We saw it in the bowl game. Like he made people look stupid trying to cover him. And this is from a kid who was a true freshman that basically didn't get to practice half the season. Like it tells you all you need to know about his talent level. Well, now he's been able to actually get it together and get out there and kind of hone his craft a little bit. I'm expecting him to go out there and just chew people up. And it's going to be a lot of it because Pauling's going to draw a ton of attention.
Yeah, I mean that's double slot would be great to see with Pauling and Tretch.
Or even going trips. 2 guys on the interior.
Yeah, for me, the biggest visible change is going to be downfield passing. Because look, Tanner Mordecai struggled with that. It was a huge issue. It's a huge issue for us last year. I was at the Purdue game and there were a couple balls where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this guy, he's got to be able to connect on them. And Tyler Van Dyke, it's in his arsenal. He has the ability to do that now. How that materializes and whether it materializes, I think it's a big story. It's kind of a storyline for me too. I think that being able to throw the ball down the field is going to open up guys like Bryson Green a little bit more. And obviously when you got those 2 amazing slot receivers, like what you're talking about in a trip formation or double, whatever it is, it's going to be good. And the ability to really put the ball downfield was a glaring weakness for this team last year and for Mordecai. Now it got a little bit better with Braden Locke, but it wasn't. I mean, I want to see someone be able to actually throw these guys open down the field because that's really critical, you know, and can Tyler Van Dyke throw them open? specifically.
Honestly,
Zach Bart's
based off the film I've seen of him, I think that's a strength. But I do want to put one more thing out there because I think the national one is going to be the return of the Wisconsin offensive line dominance. I think there's a chance that the line is very good this year for the first time in a long time. And I think part of it is going to be driven by the fact that because of the type of offense that we're playing, we've seen what happened in Phil Longo's offense at North Carolina when they got it clicking. Guys were gashing. Like the two guys that ended up going pro ended up averaging like over 7 yards a carry. So it would not be shocking to me to see both guys over 6 if the offense starts clicking, which will be look at how explosive Wisconsin's running game is at that point.
Couple quick comments here. Dark Ray says, I just want to see this offense become more well-rounded. Yes, I mean, that would be very, very nice. Will Hanna adds a storyline. Rushing yards per attempt, 5+ is needed to really make this offense work. In reality, I would like to see 5.3 or above. Yeah, 4.6 is what we had last year, and I do expect that to be higher this year. And this is right. Good comment from Will Hanna. You got to have the rushing attack is still a really big aspect of what Phil Longo does, and it does need to be better. And then Zach Bartz agrees with me, more downfield shots, given TVD's arm strength. Yeah, that is a big one for me. And I really want to see that.
It's not just the arm strength. It's he has a knack for just understanding how things are going to open up. Like they talk about, what is it? It was one of the things that they always talked about with Hornibrook. He just knows when to throw the football, like when guys are going to break. And because of that, he is just capable of hitting guys. And I watched, if you watch his highlights from last year, it's constant. Like he throws dimes that I'm like, why is he throwing that football? And you see it the split second where the guy makes his cut and ends up has like a step for like a half second on a guy. And that's when the ball hits him. And it's like, this is nuts. Like these are NFL throws. And that's exactly what people say about him. Like he throws some passes that you're just like, oh my God, that's incredible. And then you see him do some stuff where it's like, what are you doing?
And think about combining the ability to kind of understand and kind of, as you mentioned, like to be able to anticipate that. You combine that with a guy like Tretch and that route running ability and his ability to gain separation very quickly. That could be a very lethal combo, those two. Because if he can anticipate those throws and that timing and get timing down with Tretch, that could be a really, really impressive partnership. Speaking of that, I think I know the answer to this question. Newcomer that will have the biggest impact, newcomer meaning new playing time, have the biggest impact, and how will he specifically improve this offense? I'm guessing your answer is Tretch.
It might be Tyree Walker.
Tyree Walker. Okay, all right. Tell me about it.
I think there's a chance that he ends up having like an 800 or 900 yard season as a running back and is really good for us. There's a chance he's our bell cow because I do think he provides a little more power game than what you're going to get from Ches Malusi, and I think that's going to be needed. I honestly, a 3rd and 1, I don't trust Ches, and that's not a knock on him. It's just that's not his forte. He's more of a guy who kind of slices, but if he needs to push his legs and push, I don't know if he's capable of doing that. And I trust Walker to kind of be a bowling ball in that situation. And even if the hole's not there, just driving through and getting that yard.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tyree Walker is going to be really good. I think he is going to be that kind of that short down back, that short yardage back. But he's going to be a good 1-2 punch with Malusi. But I still think Malusi's the bell cow. I mean, even just watching some highlights, I was watching some highlights yesterday or a couple days ago of the early games of the season last year. And I'm like, man, Malusi was running like a machine. He looked great at the beginning of last year. And I really think he is due. I mean, I've said it many times. I think he's going to have a stellar season. I think he really can impress people. And if he stays healthy, I know that Justin disagrees with me, but he's going to be a guy. Justin likes to tell me about how his yards per attempt were never that impressive. And I disagree. And I'm telling you, last year it was like 6 before he left. And, I mean, the guy.
It all came in one game where he averaged like 12 yards a carry.
Yeah. Well, look, this
what was it, Buffalo or whoever?
It was Buffalo. He looked amazing in Buffalo against Buffalo. No, I mean, I think
but his numbers last year, if you look at the opponents that we played, he didn't play anybody that with a pulse defensively though either. Like if he had a whole season,
we didn't see what he could be like if there was when we did
fair. I'll give you that, but there's a reason why I said he's had 17 of 22 games where he's averaged under 5 yards a carry. I'm just saying. Like I have to look at that, and that he's got to prove me wrong on that.
Fair. That's fair.
I'm not saying I don't listen. I have nothing against Ches. I want him to ball out. If he goes out there and carves everybody up and averages 6 yards a carry, that's amazing. I love it for him. It will be great for him as a ending story to his career. Hopefully, gets him looking for an NFL team. But I need to see him do that. He's got to go out there, and I can't have him going out against Alabama or Penn State or whoever and averaging 3.5 yards a carry. I will be pulling my hair out if we do not put somebody else in at that point, because it will drive me nuts if we're not getting more production than that.
Well, speaking of Alabama, we have a Crimson Tide fan with us here. Keith Holcomb says, "Roll Tide, looking forward to the game and the season." Keith, thanks for joining us. We are going to be talking about your team in the second half of the show today, doing a little preview about Alabama, so that'll be good. Zach Bart says, "I know he's not necessarily a newcomer, but given his injury status and the fact that he missed almost all of last year, I'm going Renfro at center for the newcomer, the biggest impact." Yeah, that's a good shout. I'm giving it to Tretch for me. I think Tretch and how
I think that's fair.
And I think the way he does it is, we watch his film, obviously. He has such an uncanny ability to gain separation, and it cannot be it can't be overstated, I think. And he is going to get open because, listen, the number one corner, they're not covering Tretch. They're not. They're focused on Will Pauling. They're focused on
getting the number 2 corner.
He's not getting the number exactly. And I think he is going to victimize some of these defenders that he's going against. I really think he's going to have a great year. So
I'll be quite blunt. He cannot be covered. Like, I've seen enough footage of him that he can't be covered by a safety. And if you put a linebacker on him, you're an idiot.
Well,
like,
he can't be covered by a linebacker.
Way too. And that's what I think is some of the things you're going to do. You're going to have a third or fourth corner on him, and nobody's got a corner at that position other than maybe Alabama. And no smoke here, Keith, but I don't know how deep you guys are with what happened in the offseason, so I don't know how good that guy is from an experience standpoint. There certainly could be very talented. I just don't know.
Yeah, Alabama's a very good team, of course, but we'll talk about them soon. All right, so next up here, a player on last year's team. So not in one of the newcomers. Obviously, Renfro was one that Zach used. Player on last year's team that will make the biggest jump. So a contributor last year that makes the biggest jump this year. So for me, I'm going Bryson Green. I've said this before. I'm going to keep answering. This is like my guy this year, which I feel like is kind of like the kiss of death, because after what I said about Skylar Bell last year, look what happened. So let's hope that doesn't happen. But I love the way he came on at the end of last season. I think he really started to shine, and he was developing into the guy that we thought he was going to be. You combine that with a guy who can throw the ball downfield in TVD, and attention being given to Will Pauling and maybe Tretch Kekahuna when he starts rolling. I think Bryson Green takes a big jump, and he surprises us. He becomes potentially even like a second, third team all conference, outside wide receiver.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing with him is going to be, we know he's not going to suddenly turn into a burner. He's just got to be physical. He's got to find a way to create separation, either with his shoulders or hands, in order to create easy separation where he's not going to get flagged. And not that he was getting flagged a lot last year. I just don't know if he was physical enough until later in the season. And he was a guy that came on a little bit towards the end of the season. His stats certainly perked up at the end. And obviously we saw what he did against LSU.
Yeah.
Now, LSU's secondary wasn't great, but he did a really nice job in a couple of his catches of creating separation against the man that was on him. And that's something he's got to be able to continue to do, because I think Van Dyke is capable of putting the ball on him if he can do it. Now, he's also capable of, if he doesn't do it, getting picked off because the receiver doesn't help him. That's something that's got to be done. Like, that's going to be something that low key this season needs to be handled by the wide receivers. They need to be better at winning the fight. Like, that's part of your gig, is being able to create those little situations where it doesn't get flagged, but everybody knows that there's some tricks and stuff that's going on there. I mean, one of the things I still remember is the most hated moment in Badger history for me was watching a game we lost to Iowa because the receiver grabbed onto the face mask of the defender and pulled it into him and got a pass interference call. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this didn't get caught, and now it's going to end up potentially costing us a game.
Yeah. Did you have anyone else for your biggest jump?
I'm gonna give him some props here. I'm gonna say it's gonna be Jack Nelson.
And Zach,
I think the level of improvement that we're gonna see this year is suddenly he's going to be this might be the first year that we see him, that all that the accolades and stuff that were associated with him, we may go, you know what? It finally came together. And this is going to be where Blazek kind of gets the best out of him, and he gets his chance to leave at a high note.
I mean, I push back a little bit only because I don't really see that as a big jump. He was already a good left tackle. I mean, he had some issues last year that I think get cleaned up, but I don't think he's going to be like far better at blocking than he was last year. I think he'll clean up his game. He'll have less holding penalties, hopefully. But is he really going to, you think he's going to take that much of a jump?
I do, because I think part of the issue was last year from a technique standpoint. I think that he just was kind of, I don't think Bicknell got the best out of him from it. I think he really struggled with being in his head. And that's why he struggled so much with the speed rush. I think the techniques that he was being taught, he didn't believe in. So he didn't trust his feet. And I think it really cost him. And you just can't have that at that position, because a speed rusher will absolutely chew you up if you're not comfortable with what you're doing. And that's why we see young guys at tackle that have all the promise in the world look horrible, because they don't trust themselves on how they're supposed to react. And I think that's where we're going to see the big difference here, is Nelson's going to be far more comfortable this season. He's going to be able to rely more on just his physical gifts, and we're going to see him play at a far higher level than what we've seen.
Yeah, it's necessary. It's necessary. I mean, he made us mad a lot last year. Made you really mad. But
if the pre-snap stuff goes away, that in itself will make it better. But I don't want him. Like, you could almost pin the Washington State game on him from how bad he was at left tackle in that game.
Yeah, that was bad. That was bad. I wish I wish I could share some of the text messages that Ryan and I would get mid-game from Justin about Jack Nelson at times, because it was rough. It was rough, but let's hope it is better. I mean, it needs to be better.
There was a lot of profanity. I'm not gonna...
Yeah. A lot. What new wrinkles do you think we're going to see from Phil Longo? Like, what or not, or what you would hope to see? What do you expect to see? What do you hope to see as far as new plays, new wrinkles, things that we didn't get a chance to see in year one of Longo's offense, but now with another year, with some more time to practice and kind of install different things, what do you think we might see?
I think we'll be under center a little bit more this season.
You think so?
And I think part of that has to do simply with the fact that you have a quarterback whose hand isn't hurt. And we'll hopefully on 3rd and 4th down, when we go for it, we're going to have people far less angry about the fact that, why are you doing this from the shotgun? I get some of that. I understand it, but no offense. How many times did we watch a Paul Chryst offense on 4th down get absolutely just stomped when they tried to run it? It didn't.
How many times did they actually get it?
But we'd be under center and run a fullback dive. And the first 4 times we did it, it worked. And then the rest of the season, like, I don't think we picked up one.
And then he would just keep running it over and over and over.
Like, oh, this has worked. They worked earlier. We're above 50%. So the analytics say, it's like, yeah, but people have adjusted. Now you need to adjust. Maybe fake it and then pitch or something. Go for it.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Zach Bart says, pop pass, jet sweep. Will Hannah Green will certainly have more receptions than Bell.
Yeah, I don't think that does not seem like something that is a Longo staple.
I don't want to see it. I have, like, just, we saw quite a bit of it in the Paul Chryst days, and I don't want to see any. I don't want to see it. I want to see it occasionally, but I don't need to see that. What I'm really looking for is, I mean, this is the one I was going to get. Dad says a pass that travels 15 plus yards in the air would be cool. Yes, I think that's going to happen. I think you're going to see quite a bit of that with TVD. But yeah, that to me is what it is. Open the damn field, throw the ball deep. And you know what? If you throw a pick on that, you know what? You can live with that. It's like a punt anyway. So just take some risks.
I think that realistically is going to be the biggest difference potentially in opening up the offense this year. If you force a defense to cover that between 10 and 20 yard range, it keeps them from being able to come downhill and just close everything up. And we've seen that previously in Wisconsin offenses, people stack the box. There's so many bodies in that first 10 yards, you cannot pass there. And we would sit there and watch Graham Mertz, who did not want to throw downfield, try to force things into that range. And it's like, no, you have to, if they're going to stack the box, you have to make those guys move out of it. And that means you have to work that 10 to 20 yard range where those guys have to get uncomfortable and be like, I can't sit here, because if I take a false step, it's a 15, 20 yard pass.
You're right. And when that happens, when you make them defend that deep ball, what is it going to do for Pauling and Tretch? It's going to open things right up for them. They're going to feast on that. So yeah, it's not even a wrinkle. It just takes some risks. And I know that's in Longo's bag. I know he wants to do that. I know he wanted to do it last year. I want to see more of it. I want to see risks. I want to see us open things up. I want to scare teams. I want to intimidate teams because we're actually not going to just dink and dunk down the field. We're going to throw the ball deep, which is going to be really nice. All right, so let me ask you this. Let's talk about floor ceiling 4 points per game. Now, we did an over and under show a few weeks ago, and we set it at 29. You said it was going to be over. But give me your honest to goodness floor of what this team's points per game can be, given the fact that, we have Ches back, we've got Walker, we've got TVD, year 2 of Longo. Like, where are you thinking floor wise, and then where are you thinking ceiling wise?
I think it has to be 28. Ooh. I think that's sitting in the Paul Chris range for where he was during the bulk of his time here. If you're beneath that with an offense that's predicated on scoring points, there's a problem. And I realize we had a lot of things that went wrong last year. I think the ceiling, if I had to take a guess, if things go really well, you're probably looking at like 34. I don't think we're going to get higher than that, but that would be a really strong season from this team. And given the schedule that they're playing, is borderline probably stupid of me to put it that high. But if he's capable of getting these guys to play like UNC was when they were clicking, then they're absolutely capable of getting into that point range. And that's what I think you're aiming for. If things are going really well, that's a 10-win team. You're getting in the 34 point per game range. You are absolutely an offense that is scaring any team you're playing against. And that may not be a win against everybody, but it's absolutely making them look at it, be like, we got to score in this game or we're going to lose.
I'm going to bring up a question from Mr. October because I think it's fair, and I want you to give me this answer based on what you just said. What is the in-conference points floor ceiling? Because obviously you look at the first 3 games. Yeah, we're gonna not Alabama. That's not it. But when you look at the first 2 games,
that's actually a big deal having that taken out.
Right. So I mean, I think that's a fair point because so first of all, what I wrote down while you're thinking about that, what I wrote down is 26 to 33. Just because it was 23.5 last year, I'm not saying we have to be better. We have to be better, and we will be better. But there were times where our offense, it just looked atrocious last year. But there were times where it did get figured out. 23 points a game was bad. I think 26 is the floor. To me, that's realistic floor. That's not where I think we have to be. That's the realistic floor. Ceiling is 33. I think we end up around 28.5, 29. I think 29 is pretty much where we end up, which is fine. That's okay because also our defense is going to be better this year too. You have to remember that. We won 7 games last year, and we scored 23.5 points a game. And we did not have a defense that we expect to have this year. Now our schedule's tougher, no doubt, but I think that the floor is a little bit lower than what you think. Now the in-conference thing is interesting because when you look at, so let's just take Alabama and Western Michigan, South Dakota off right now. Let's just look at the Big Ten. USC, I think you can score a little bit against them, but I mean, Iowa. Looking at Penn State, looking at Oregon, I think, a floor ceiling in conference, potentially like 22 to 29-ish. I think that could be where we are. What do you think?
I would say I'm looking at 24 or 25, I think is where you have to be for this, for a floor standpoint. Now, I do want to say if we're at 26 for a floor, I would say you're talking about Phil Longo on the hot seat at that point. Like, I think that he's going to be coaching for his job next year if he's at 26 in year 2. Like, he has to show improvement. They didn't bring him in here to score between 26 and 30 points per game. They brought him in to get us in the mid 30s and to make us have an offense that takes some pressure off the defense and allows them to play free and loose, which is something that the previous regime couldn't do. The offense was always putting stress on the defense and making them play lights out because they were incapable of running away from teams. And that's something that you want Phil Longo to do. You want him to get a 3-score lead so that you can play with some looseness and let guys and take some risks on defense.
Dark Ray adds his opinion here. Floor is 25 and ceiling is over 30. I worry that the really good teams could give us trouble and we might have some games under 20. Yeah, we will certainly, but hopefully not too many. So 2 more questions before we move on to the Alabama preview. Floor and ceiling discussion of Tyler Van Dyke touchdowns. So where do you think, what's the floor and ceiling? So we did this over and under earlier, not too long ago, and we had it around 20. I think you took the over, but give me a floor and ceiling for Tyler Van Dyke touchdown passes.
I'm going to say a floor of 18.
Oh, I'm wondering how high your ceiling is going to go.
Yeah, my ceiling is going to be 32, and that's him playing like out of his mind. Well,
18 to 32 is a wide range.
It is a wide range, but we're talking like worst case scenario and best case scenario.
Yeah.
So best case scenario is he plays like freshman year, Tyler Van Dyke, and he just absolutely goes off. Worst case scenario is he's competent, but not really doing what we're not getting out of him what we need to probably beat some teams that we would like to beat.
We will remind him of this
7-win team if he gets.
Justin said Mordecai would throw for 30 plus touchdowns.
I did, and I've reevaluated. There's a difference here between what I'm talking about Van Dyke. I also said I thought a floor for him was going to be like 22 last year.
Yeah.
And there's a pretty big
we all
difference.
we all did, to be honest. I mean, that like it was very shocking to see what happened with Mordecai, and there's no doubt about that.
I've gone on the record of very much so saying that I think that Van Dyke is probably going to be in the mid-20s, which is a significant improvement over last year, but it's not where you're looking at it like, wow, this was an amazing season from him. It's where like he was solid for us. He gave us enough that we needed to win the games that we needed to win.
To me, it's 20 to 29. That's my floor ceiling for Van Dyke. 20 is. I really do expect him to get 20 touchdowns. I think you look at now. Of course, I think it's like health is everything. Okay, so these numbers don't. If he misses half the season, then this is a consequential point. But I mean, I think I agree with you. Mid-20s, 2 a game, roughly. That's 24. So I think 20 on the low end, 30 on the high, 29 for me on the high. And I don't think it's the 30, but we'll have to see what goes there.
So I'm going to just say this, Neza, I think the interceptions are being a little overblown. We had the same argument with Mordecai when he came in that we thought he was going to have double-digit picks, and it didn't manifest itself. I think that you trust – this is why you have Phil Longo, and you look at the guys that he had that he turned into studs. They had very high touchdown numbers and very low interceptions. Now, I think his guys were typically in that like 30 to 8 range or something like that. I think that's what you're looking for, is like you're hoping that if Van Dyke has a really good season, you're hoping he's like at 26 and 8, something like that, which I think we'd all live with. If we get that out of him, that'd be a great season.
I mean, we definitely would live with that for sure. Justin P says, would you rather have TVD or Mertz this season? I don't want Mertz on this team, so I'm always picking TVD in this situation. I know that Mertz had a decent year in Florida last year, but no, sorry. He had his chance here. He was unsuccessful. I didn't like it. And no, I definitely don't want him on there for sure.
So I honestly wasn't impressed with the film. I watched both. Honestly, I watched the highlight reels from both him and Van Dyke. There were a couple of things that really stood out to me between the two of them that were things that do not get discussed enough. And this is why people drive me nuts when they're talking about Mertz, is how great he has been. The ball placement and accuracy that Van Dyke had compared to Mertz was night and day. There were throws that wide receivers were just jumping out of their shoes, guys were wide open, that Mertz was just like high and outside where they'd have to make a play on it. And when Van Dyke is on, he throws about as pretty of a ball as you could possibly have. Like, he puts it right on guys.
I mean, Van Dyke's ceiling is much higher than Mertz.
Yeah.
That to me is very clear. Nessa, funny comment here. Believe with Justin, realism with Rajiv. That's a rare one there. You don't get that. I'm the optimistic one on this station. All right. So know your foe. I'm sorry. One more. Last one. Offensive MVP. Who's your offensive MVP for the year? Do you think TVD or you think it's someone else? I'll go first here. I think it's Will Pauling. I think Will Pauling is still the guy. And I think Pauling is going to just, I'm not saying he's going to have a huge jump because, he had a great year last year and he had, 70 receptions. I think I forgot what his number was. It's not in front of me, but yeah, I mean, I still think he's the offensive MVP. I think he's absolutely the man and he's going to be the man again.
If I was thinking about saying him, I'm just concerned about how potentially guys like Tretch and Green can eat into his numbers, that he may end up being roughly the same, but being a better player this year. Like, his yards per catch could go up. His catches could go down 10 or so. And we'd be looking at it like, wow, he was more explosive this year, but he didn't necessarily jump off the screen with being, maybe goes up 50 yards, but has 15 less catches and ends up being a 16 or 17 yard per catch guy, which would be a big deal. And we talked about the same thing. That's one of the things I said with Green, is Green could end up having the same number of catches this year, but if his yards per catch go up, suddenly he looks better. And actually, Green was probably one of the guys that had a pretty good season from a yard per catch standpoint, because he had not a ton of catches and he had a couple of games that really bumped him up. I think he was at like 17 or something like that.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to Alabama. Know Your Foe series. This is week 3. We already did Western Michigan and South Dakota. Now we get to the big boys. Alabama. This is a game that people have been circled for a while, right? Alabama's coming to Camp Randall. Now, why this game is at 11 a.m. is beyond my comprehension. I absolutely hate it. I think it's an advantage for Alabama because I want there to be
it kills
a bit
the crowd.
of a better.
Nobody wants to see a big game like this at 11 a.m.
I hate it. I hate it. I don't like it. This is a game that Justin and I talked about going to with Ryan. I talked about it. It's my daughter's birthday that weekend, so we're not going to coming up. And by the way, my Colts play at Green Bay the following day. So it could be a really big weekend for me if Wisconsin beats Alabama and all your people and your Green Bay Packers fans are listening to this, lose to my Colts. That'll be awesome. Let's go. But I digress. Alabama loses the man, the myth, the legend, Nick Saban. In comes Kalen DeBoer, bringing his Washington pedigree with him. A lot of Washington transfers, by the way, come into this team. And it's interesting. And if you're an Alabama fan in the chat, if you're still in here, I do want the take of Alabama fans, because it's interesting. I mean, you look every year at Alabama and you think, okay, they're going to make the playoff. They're going to make the playoff. Now, they probably are going to make the playoff with the expansion. But this team lost a lot of players, especially on the defense. Cornerbacks. I mean, the cornerback looks to be a bit of a problem for them. I wouldn't say problem, because does Alabama really
guys
have
that
a
was
problem?
their best returning start, or would have been their best returning starter, is playing at Ohio State now.
Yeah. So Jalen Milroe, of course, is their quarterback. New offensive coordinator, Nick Sheridan. I wonder, I mean, obviously the goal is Washington had a great offense. Washington's routinely has a great offense. Now, Alabama's built on their defense. Their offense has always been really good, but Washington's really kind of got that super high intensity offense. I wonder if the goal is to really turn Milroe into what Michael Penix did last year at Washington. Do you think this offense is going to be successful under DeBoer at Alabama? They have got the talent. Do you feel like, from what you've seen and what you've looked at with them, they're going to be good?
I think, based off of what I've seen of Milroe, I think I've heard people say that Michael Penix wasn't this great thing, and I'm like, anybody that's saying that is nuts. For one, Penix played under DeBoer for the bulk of his college career. He was originally under him at Indiana, and that's where he started to show it before he got the leg injuries. But he had a couple of games against Ohio State where he absolutely was carving them up and keeping them in the game, and Ohio State was fighting for their life in a game against them before they kind of ran out of steam late in it. Penix has arm talent, like serious arm talent. I said it when he got drafted in the first round. I said, I have not seen a quarterback this season that has made more high-level throws over the course of the college season than he has. He had stud talent at wide receiver. He absolutely threw some dime throws where I'm like, that is a throw that is an NFL throw. He's putting it on a guy where people are tight and he's still fitting it in there. Now, Milroe has a cannon for an arm. I question whether he can make enough consistent high-level throws that he is capable of playing that type of offense. Now, they may not use him the same way. I think that he will use his legs more. So there's some things that they can do with him. But if you're looking for him to try and be Penix this season, I don't see him being able to do that. You have to use him differently.
I personally don't think Penix is going to be a good pro, by the way. It's just my personal opinion.
He might not be.
I don't think Penix is going to be good. And I think Milroe's much more versatile than Penix, in my opinion.
I just don't think he's as consistent of a passer. And that's why I'm hearing a lot of people say that they think he's going to jump through the roof with the passing game. And I'm like, I don't know if he's that guy. Like, we always say these guys have the big arm are capable of doing it. And the guys who do it are freak shows. We rarely see them.
Yeah. They've got a sophomore running back, Justice Haynes, in the backfield. They lost McClellan to the NFL, and they got in a new offensive lineman from Washington, Parker Brailsford, which apparently is going to be one of their top offensive linemen. Look, I think Alabama's offense is going to be fine. And Nessa actually asked the question, can our linebackers chase down Milroe? This is a good point here because we struggled last year when we played, who's the quarterback at Wazoo? I'm losing his name right now.
Cam Ward.
Cam Ward, yeah. I mean, he abused us, and Milroe has the ability to do just that. Do our linebackers have the ability? Yes, because our linebackers are faster than they were last year because we have new linebackers. Guys like Pius and the speed that these guys bring, Lowry, I think we're not going to have as much of an issue. That being said, Milroe's good. He's very fast. He's very versatile, and he is going to make us pay. And there are going to be times where we're not going to be able to chase him down. And it's
going to be disciplined. It's not going to be. They're not going to out athlete him. What they're going to have to do is they're going to have to be disciplined, and they're not going to be able to give up rush lanes.
Yes,
and that is going to be the number one problem. If they start taking risks, trying to get home, that's when stupid things happen. As a Packer fan, there's been no worse situation than I've watched than watching running quarterbacks absolutely make who is our Clay Matthews get out of it, constantly take risks and give up contain, and then watch a huge rush lane open up for a quarterback to run. You can't do it. In Wisconsin, the previous defense that we ran under Leonard, they did an excellent job of keeping guys in their rush lanes and just keeping running quarterbacks in the pocket. You have better athleticism now. You also have to play disciplined. If you do, you're going to have a very high level defense this year, but they have to be able to do that. And they have to your goal is to make Milroe uncomfortable and make him take risks. So that means that honestly, the biggest thing in this game is going to be, they have to be able to stop the run game and put them in 3rd and long. And then you maybe can throw some things out there defensively that make him uncomfortable.
I mean, this is going to be the first big test we have, obviously. And it's to be fair, it's also going to be Alabama's first test. They don't have anybody that's on their schedule until us either. So it's going to be interesting. And kudos to, we got Keith Holcomb, an Alabama fan, giving us some good comments here. He says, Milroe is a great D ball. If he can read the D and manage the game, the sky is the limit. Milroe is arguably the best athlete on the field. Yeah.
I would agree with that.
That's absolutely the case. And that's what scares me, right? I mean, I have nightmares thinking about what Cam Ward did to our linebackers last year. Well, and I know that we're different, but I don't want to see Jalen Milroe come into Camp Randall and abuse us because we can't tackle him. And it's something that I'm very concerned about. And I think to me, that's the biggest storyline going into this game is, can we contain that guy?
We've been there before. I mean, have you not looked, if you look back at Ohio State before they changed to some of the more recent offenses, we had Braxton Miller. We had how many other guys that just ran all over us? And it's like Justin Fields did some of it. Like he couldn't throw to save his life the first time. We had a really good defense in 2018. We sacked him 5 times in both of those games, and it didn't matter. He still ended up making plays with his legs, and that was the difference in that game because he could buy time to throw the football, and Wisconsin's defense eventually got tired. And they just could not make plays anymore. And Ohio State ran away in the second half in both games.
Ohio State always runs away. It's annoying.
But just to weigh on this a little bit more, honestly, what it's going to come down to a little bit in this game is if Wisconsin wants to be able to do this, the offense has got to be able to make some plays. I think we really need to hope that the changes that they're making in scheme on offense and defense hopefully haven't fully solidified, and there's some mistakes that are made, and we could put them in a bind a little bit and make guys think, which takes away some of the athletic advantage because guys are second guessing what they should be doing. And you hopefully can kind of put them on their heels a little bit. And it's possible to do that. I mean, we've seen Alabama have games like that against teams that are inferior, where they end up getting beat by an Auburn or a, Ole Miss. Like those teams are not more talented than Alabama. What they did is they schemed up a good game, and they made them think enough that there were enough mistakes by Alabama that they'd lose the game.
Our ability to score on the defense is going to be huge. And their defense did lose a couple of big pieces. So the new defensive coordinator is Kane Womack, who was at South Alabama, whatever. Plays a 4-2-5 kind of swarm system. They lost 2 pass rushers and 2 cornerbacks to the NFL. So cornerback is kind of an issue that they have. But they have stud linebackers. Deontay Lawson, Jahad Campbell, their safety, Malachi Moore is going to be, he's an All-American, I think, or he will be an All-American. They've got a lot of talent there, but they did lose a little bit on defense. And I think that's kind of where we've been talking about the offense all day. And again, that's our first big test. So Is Longo going to take risks? Is Luke Fickell going to say, all right, they're coming to our house. We're playing the, perennial college football's top dog, championships, so many. I mean, like this, you got to take risks to beat this team.
Yeah.
And if they're young, Keith even said they're young at cornerback. They obviously don't have the depth there. They did bring in, what's his name? Damani Jackson from SC. Nothing too crazy, but he came in at like a 93 rating. We're going to be able to make some headway there. If we need those 2 first games, that Western Michigan and South Dakota need to be tune-up games for our receivers. Because if you're going to get Alabama, you need to take advantage of a young secondary. This is not Alabama's best secondary. They've had incredible secondaries in the past, and they will always have good secondaries because they get the best recruits in the country. This is clear. This is a fact. This is a time where we can take advantage of them in this particular role. I don't think we're going to run the ball very well in Alabama, okay? Because their D line, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to have to use the speed on the outside. Bryson Green, Will Pauling, Trech Kekahuna, Vinny Anthony, we're going to have to stretch the field out to open things up. And I think they can be had. For the record, I don't think we're going to win this game. I said that last week, but I do think that there's a chance that we can put them under pressure. And if we don't take risks, they are going to beat down the doors of Camp Randall. We have to be willing to play with this team and to show them we're not afraid.
Yeah, I think that what you're looking for in this game is, number one, the first 2 games of the season, to me, Wisconsin has to be lights out. You got to take care of business. You need to prove that the issues that you had last year on offense are gone, and you need to blow those 2 teams off the field. And you need to feel comfortable and confident going into this game that you can run what you run and run it well. If you get that and you go into this game against Alabama, then you have to absolutely not play scared. Because if you go into this game and think that you're going to play conservative and somehow find a way to hopefully make a play late in the game, I'm a firm believer in if you haven't been doing something all game, that the odds of it working when you suddenly are just going to do something you haven't been doing the whole game are probably not going to go well because you haven't been doing it, which is why it drives me nuts when coaches play ultra conservative and they go, well, now we got to turn it on. No, you want to go, how you get a game like this against Alabama is you need to jump on them and you need to make them uncomfortable and you need to make them start making mistakes or take risks that they don't want to take. They want to get ahead on you and they want to just turn the athletes loose. You need to find a way to make them, put them on their heels and make them play very, very tight and scared because they don't want, they're uncomfortable with what they're trying to do. That is something that we have not done as a team in a while. And this is, as we said earlier, this is why you bring in Phil Longo. You want a guy who can go out there and is capable of dropping 40 on a good team. You may not do it all the time, and it may not be this team here, but if you're going to beat Bama, you're going to have to score points. Wisconsin doesn't get into the 30s in this game, we're not winning it.
I mean, and and I think that, let's not underestimate the fact that this is going to be Kalen DeBoer's first big game. Yeah. I mean, the post Nick Saban era, this is his national stage. I mean, I know it's stupid kickoff time, but whatever. 9 a.m. my time.
To be clear, I think this is a good hit. He reminds me of Lance Leipold a little bit.
Look, Alabama's going to bring in a good guy, and Kalen DeBoer is going to be successful there. There's no doubt about that. But Keith said, Bama is still Bama, though. Yeah, that's right. Bama is still Bama, and no one can talk shit about Bama because Bama wins championships and other teams don't. So the bottom line is we have to play our butts off to beat this team.
Yeah,
it's going to be a huge game for us. It's going to be a huge game for Bama. It's their first real big game. It's our first real big game. We're at home. We do have to go to Tuscaloosa next year, which I think we need to try to go to that game because that's going to be a lot of fun. I put this at 40%. I think you put it in a similar area. I think this is our first loss of the season. If we win this game, if we find a way to get it done against Bama, we go into a bye week. They go into a bye week as well after this game. That would really set things up nicely for a trip to USC where I will be for that game. Honestly, that could really start things off. I mean, this is one of those signature sort of wins. Sure. If you get a win against Alabama at home in Camp Randall for the third game of the season, you're 3-0 at that point. That is a really good, sort of liftoff point for this season. And now all of a sudden you're thinking about the ceiling for this team and what could happen. But it starts here. This is going to be our big test.
I honestly think that even if they have a game where they have a good showing and if they're super competitive in this game, it bodes well for Wisconsin. Because if they take haymakers from Alabama and they come out of this game thinking we can play with this team, and this is a team that looks good. That could very well come together. DeBoer is a good coach. Wisconsin could come out of this and say, there's nobody that we're going to play the rest of the season that is going to be any better than this. We can play with everybody else that we go against.
Really good point. Bo Dragon makes a good one here. LSU is athletically very similar to Bama. The bowl game will give them a lot of confidence, even though they lost. Yeah, we played really well against LSU in the bowl game. We should have won that game, but don't get me started on that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it's going to just be huge, and it's exciting. Welcome, JB. He's in the chat. Yo, beat Bama. Yes. And Keith also says Bama doesn't play well early either, as in 11 o'clock. Well, that'd be good. Thank you for that. Keith, you're giving us a little hope that maybe we have a chance to beat your mighty Crimson Tide. We'll end it there we'll end the show there today. We're right at an hour. Justin, media days are coming up too. Is there anything that you look for with media days, or is it just kind of like I like media days? I like kind of hearing what people have to say. I think it's really just a dog and pony show. Let's be honest. But Nick Goson's going to be there. He's going to help us hopefully give us some good inside information next week on Big Ten Media Days. I just want to see confidence portrayed. That's what I want. I want Luke Fickell to go up there and show confidence, and that's what he's going to do. And I don't remember off the top of my head what players are going with him. Do you know what players are going with him?
Hunter Wooler, Jack Nelson, and Chaney.
Very good. Thank you for that. So I want to hear, that they're confident, they're ready to go. They've been working hard. To me, that's really all that's there. I like to learn more about the other teams as well. I'll read about a lot about Big Ten Media Days, but we're going to be back next week to break down Big Ten Media Days with Badger beat writer Nick Gosen from Badger 247 Sports and Ryan Herrings. We're going to have 4 people on the show next week, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Justin, final thoughts before we close the show today.
Yeah, we're getting ready, guys. It's coming into a good one here. Hopefully we'll get some non-softball answers coming out of this media day. I'm really hopeful that we get some insight into things maybe from the offseason, some guys that have really shown that they've taken a jump. We've heard some really good things about some of the young guys. I'm hopeful that we'll hear that Van Dyke looks like he's taken a big step coming into the fall. Because if they do, that will be massive for them if the offense takes a jump.
There were a few comments here. A Hills plays. You had some really good questions, and we're going to star those. We're going to get back to those in another show where we kind of collect some questions, but I like some of your questions that we starred. But yeah, look, we're getting closer. We're getting really close. And Big Ten Media Days always kind of like signifies the start of the season, right? I mean, in the sense that you can look at
practice starts the week after.
Right. And that's just amazing. So yeah, we are closing in next week. We're going to get into Big Ten Media Days. We're going to get into defense and continue our Know Your Foe series with USC. With that, as always, my friend, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy this show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.